Welcome back, gamers. Agent Normex is back today for another video. Today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. I'm going to be referring to one of 30 Virus's videos that he goes on to explain how the God Pot is actually a bad item, and I'm going to fully disagree on him and say that I think the God Pot is probably one of the best items they added to Skyblock Hypixel. And I did watch his video, and I will go over each of his points and explain why I think he is wrong. For the first part, he does talk about how God Splashes are gone. You know, it was a big for the economy. Redstone dropped in price, glowstone dropped in price, and this is like kind of like a ruined money-making method from guilds, because the guilds obviously have problems with not being able to tax their players because there's no reason to. The thing with this is like he has a perspective that I think is different from most players, because as someone that's not like a really big YouTuber or in a really end game guild, it was very difficult for me to even get a splash, even if I wanted to. So for his perspective, he was just given a lot of opportunities to get God Splashes, which I think made him not realize that how difficult it actually is. I know there was times when I was waiting for God Splashes for up to 30 minutes, and for me that ruins the game, because I don't want to sit there waiting for a God Splash not being able to do anything. I want to be able to play the game, and the God Pot makes it so that solar players have a better chance to compete with guild players. So I truly think that that really helped, you know, with people that wanted to play alone and not have to wait around for God Pots to do this. Yes, it killed an economy, but honestly, they could just add more uses for redstone and glowstone. Like, they already made the super compactor, the Persil compactor, have like a legendary talisman, and glowstone or redstone went up to like 80k. It's probably down to 50k now. So I think that that's not really an issue anymore, because you can still make money by selling redstone and glowstone. There's still actually enough for it. So with that being said, the next part is the Jerry event ruined. The whole economy of EXP skill boost is gone. You know, gifts are only used for snow minions, and yeah, basically, if snow minions are gone, it would ruin the Jerry Island. Unfortunately, the Jerry Island is not open right now, but one of the things that you have to understand is that the Jerry Island was already a bad part to begin with, and I don't think that having no chance for skill EXP boosts is going to be any reason for that not to be, you know, to go there. Because let's be real, I never even went to the Jerry's Island, even when skill EXP boosts were a thing. I just think that generally speaking, that island needs a full rework. And the funny thing is like, there's a game in there called Project Mayhem, I believe, or Snow Mayhem, and that hasn't been finished for over a year. Ever since the event has been out, it was never finished. So it just shows you how unfinished and unpolished that island is. So one way to solve this problem that 30 has is to simply make it so that white gifts, you know, red gifts and the green gifts all give a talisman, like a present talisman, where you need to craft it. So like, you know, start off with a common one that's white. You need 9 white common talismans to create an uncommon, 9 uncommon to make a rare, you know, epic, you know, is 9 more, and then legendary, right? So you could do something like that, and that would essentially make it so that like you would need so many of those talismans that the price of snow gifts would never really drop. So just adding like something like that would actually solve an issue that he has with gifts being useless by just doing that. It's not the skill EXP boost. Now, then he goes on to say that it ruins the early and mid game, and being able to one tap most things super easily because of the price of God potions, and the economy is ruined due to not, you know, due to having the end economy is ruined due to not having God Pots. So essentially what he's saying is that basically early game players can go into the end 400k, have a God Pot, and not be fearful of dying. And he thinks that ruins the experience of the end. But let's be real now, the end is basically mid-game content in itself, and I don't think that 30 Virus is thinking back when the end was like the late game difficulty. The game just slowly progresses. I truly think that they don't have an end game or late game combat island. The end is just a mid game island. So I don't think there's much to be fearful of during that. And I think that there's no reason why people should be able to have the ability to go in there and not be scared early game players. And the thing is, they aren't punished if they die, because if they die, they lose their potion effects. So unless they have a cookie buff, but most players that are in the early game or mid game would not have enough to afford a cookie buff. They would be only using probably a God Pot and trying not to die. So if they do die, they're still punished unless they want to spend the extra 2 mil or 1.5 mil, which I feel like for early game players and mid game players, that would be a lot more to spend than 400k. So that's kind of not really an issue. next up is that like the skill boost potions in general are useless, and it costs way more than just buying them. Again, we kind of addressed this, but I just think skill boost potions themselves are kind of only really meant for early game players or also for Iron Man profiles. I don't really see a problem with this, just because of the fact that like, you know, the God Potion does this. I just don't see it as a problem. It's just people should have the ability to not have to, you know, buy a potion just for that use. Next up, he talks about Magic Find being too OP, and this is where I totally disagree, because he's saying the God Pot made items cheaper, and he specifically talked about the Scythe Blade and the Ghoul Pet. Now, the problem with the two items he referred to specifically is that, first of all, the Scythe Blade in itself is just like a cheap product. It's like, look, it's 800k. The reason why it's so cheap is because literally this item just sucks. The Scythe Blade is literally a garbage item, and if you have one, like, it's pointless. Like, it's literally a trash item. So it's not that Magic Find made this a problem. It literally, this item is just bad. The Scythe Blade is an item that no one uses. Let me give you an example here. If we go ahead and take a look at the Overflux Capacitor, right? This item, right, still goes for, look, 28, 29 mil, 30 mil, right? That's pretty dang high still compared to back in the day when it was about 40 mil before the God Pot, right? So it dropped 10 mil because of pretty much, you know, Aatrox and stuff, but I wouldn't say it's because of Magic Find specifically. It's just because of Aatrox and how the game is progressing, and items do deflate in value, but the Overflux is still a very expensive item for what it's worth, right? And he went on to say even the Ghoul Pet sucked, but the Ghoul Pet, the Ghoul Pet was only 50k. But let's be honest, Ghoul Pet is a trash pet. Take a look at an Ender Dragon pet, right? Ender Dragon pet, which is affected by Magic Find, and you're going to have pets being in the 120 plus mil range, right? So again, it's not that Magic Find, it's not that the God Pot is OP or Magic Find is OP, you know, it's just really the thing is Magic Find is a good, you know, boost, but realistically, you know, Magic Find is kind of just, you know, that's what it is. It's just good, and, you know, like, even if you didn't have God Pots, God Splash would still give you the same amount of Magic Find, so I don't understand why that's a problem. Next is going to be also that he talks about how the Parrot Pet and it got wrecked just because of the fact that, you know, it doesn't affect God Pots, so it's kind of like a useless pet, and you can see that it's so cheap. I do absolutely agree with this point. However, I think this was just a problem with Hypixel not being smart, but this is how they're always, you know, this is how Hypixel works as a game development. They don't really think about these things. They kind of just make updates and then forget about the rest. The thing is with the Parrot Pet, I think they need to change that repeat skill to something else that's useful, or they should make it work with the God Pot, which I think is the better option, because then it would actually drive the value of these up, and I feel like that would be really good for players that, you know, want to do this, because personally for me, the God Pot only lasts about 3 to 4 days, which I still think is great, and I think it's definitely I'm really happy that it lasts that long because I play so much, but in the end, having an extra 40% I don't think would be that big of a deal, and it would drive back up the price of Parrot Pets. He says this is a problem, but we have to understand that Hypixel does this all the time. If we take a look at the Turtle Pet, right? The Turtle Pet is literally, like, kind of useless because of the fact that, look at this, literally under a mil for an epic, and then a legendary. You can see here. Let's see if we could find one. It's all Shelmets. Yeah, I mean 6 mil for a legendary, right? Almost 7. To be honest, the thing with this is, like, yeah, that used to be like 25, 30 mil for a legendary turtle, and because they added the Shelmet item that makes knockback immunity, why would you want a turtle, right? So, you know, I just think that generally speaking, Hypixel just creates items and then doesn't realize how it affects the economy of the other items. So it's more or less they just have to work on planning out what they will do with the old item, because the power creep is a problem, but it's more or less just Hypixel not thinking properly, because it could easily solve this issue by changing the buff of the Parrot Pet and then changing, like, the Turtle Pet to be doing better, you know, for not having a knockback ability and just making something different, right? So those are kind of his main issues. For solutions, he did say raise the God Pot price to 10 mil, which I think is hilarious. And he says the game is boring because of the God Pot. So first of all, 30. The problem I have with 30's statement on that is that if we go ahead and take a look back in the day, he said recombobulators should be worth 500k. So you're telling me that an item you say this item, which gives you permanent stat boost, should be 1/10 of the price, but you're trying to like 20x the price of a 24-hour potion effect. I just think that's absurd. Okay, that's a little bit too much, and the game is not boring with the God Pot. The game itself, I think, is just a great game in general. I think that if you play this game and enjoy it, you don't need, like, the God Pot's not really a factor, right? Like, for me, it doesn't make me feel bad that, like, oh, an early game player could beat the end. The end is literally a mid-game island now, right? They need to create late-game islands for players. So the fact that you're saying it's boring, it's just that the game doesn't update enough for this progression that we're getting, right? Like, people are doing, like, there was a video Slavey did 8 million damage with one of his weapons, with the 26 billion Emerald Blade, right? The fact that that's happening shows me that this game needs a very late game, combat-oriented, like, level 30 plus combat area for players. That's, like, super intense, right? So, yeah, that progression issue is more or less because of Hypixel being, you know, not being smart about how they do things, right? Now, for regards to, like, so she says has a make potion effects require alchemy levels. I think this is a fine idea. I think that, like, yeah, every potion effect should have, like, a level up. You know, you have to be certain alchemy level to use it, and then the God Pot should be, like, alchemy 40, right? So then people have to actually level up alchemy, and that would solve that problem. He also says there could be a mini game that you could play to, like, increase your alchemy level. I think that could work, but personally, what I would love to see is for them to make a new class, right? Like, they made the mage a while ago for dungeons, which I thought was pretty cool. I feel like this is kind of, like, really out there, but if they can make some sort of, like, alchemist, like, class where, like, you had, like, brew potions that, like, do damage and stuff, and you're able to, like, kind of play a class that, like, buffs players with special buffs that are not from the God Pot, I think that'd be really cool. So if they could do something like that with alchemy and, like, create a whole entire class and system around it, that'd be super cool. So that's kind of like my other solution as well. But I think either of those would solve that issue. Now, he's also saying to remove, like, the God Potion itself and add modifiers, like certain types of boost, such as a speed modifier, a combat modifier for 4-hour duration. I think that could work, but I just don't see the point. I feel like realistically, what 30's problem is that the God Pot's too cheap. I think a way to make this totally fair and a reasonable price would be 1 million coins. If they double the price of the God Potion to 1 million coins, and he says it takes about a week to use a God Pot, generally speaking, late game to end game builds would require 1 mil per week in taxes, right? So if it's about a week for him, then 1 mil should be the price target, not 10 mil. And they shouldn't have, like, different types of God Potions that are, like, modifiers. I think it should just be the God Potion, raise up to 1 mil price if he's complaining about it. And I think that would kind of solve the problem because, again, the taxes for a guild is 1 mil per week. Yeah, and like I said, his last problem was the progression thing. But again, I feel like when it comes to progression, let's be honest here, there's more than just progression, right? Like, it took me a long time to get my skill average up to skill average 50. As you can see here, most of my skills are level 50 or almost 60. And honestly, the only one that's really lacking is fishing. As you can see, like, I'm top ranked in forging 90, and I'm even 67 in mining, right? I play this game a lot, and I enjoy it with or without the God Pot. The God Pot just makes the game more fun for me, to be honest, because I'm not waiting for some freaking guy to be like, oh, go advertise for God Splashes, right? It just saves so much time. It prevents less scamming. It makes the Skyblock money. And overall, I think the only fix that they really need to do realistically, probably I would say, is just increase the price of the God Potion to 1 mil, or leave it and make an alchemy requirement for the God Pot. That's it. Those two would solve the problem that he has. So yeah, that's kind of my opinion on the God Potion and why I actually think it's a great item to the game and how it helps players out and makes the game more fun rather than boring. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this little rant talk I had. I just really want to talk about this. I just feel like his opinion is different from people that, don't have the access to the things he has. Like, he has a lot of access to, like, big guilds that always give him splashes, while a lot of these, like, us players, like regular players, are always struggling to get our God Pots. We have to, like, wait for a God Splash, while, in his situation, he was able to get them pretty much when he wanted for the most part, or at least for most of the time. Yeah. All right, guys. I'll see you next time.